Hi, I'm Josh Bassages, Director and CEO of the Royal Ontario Museum. Welcome to this special online presentation of our signature lecture series, ROM Speaks. As we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional ancestral lands of the Wendat, the Anishinaabeg Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation since time immemorial to today. From fascinating viewpoints to thought-provoking insights, ROM Speaks presents the brightest minds and most compelling voices on ideas that matter across art, culture, and nature. Please enjoy this essential new addition to our ROM at Home digital programming. And I look forward to welcoming you back to the museum for more programs like this when it is safe to do so.
It's a real privilege to be here with you both this evening. Because of where we are, I wanted to begin with history and a reference to the exhibition. The Maharajas certainly knew how to live, and anyone who's not seen the exhibition will at least have walked past that silver Rolls Royce, which I've learned is a hunting vehicle. We'll get to that later. A women's hunting vehicle. Before we get to that, can you tell me a bit about Rajasthani cuisine and what we inherited from the imperial kitchens, from royal cooking? Is there anything that sort of trickles down from imperial traditions into the Indian cooking that we love today?
Hi everyone. I think I'm still a fanboy moment sitting to mother. A lot of the royal palaces, and I think mother will agree, were very locked. They were very locked. It was very inaccessible to a common man. And after some times when the royal families fell apart, you had the chefs who opened restaurants, who became consultants, who started doing their own businesses. But more than that, it was people like mother who actually brought those recipes documented in so many ways and brought it forward. And people do not know that she was working with one of my editors. Her name is Rita D'Souza. And she said that mother has a unique sixth sense to food. She actually knows the end product by heart. She can step it down, which is a unique scientist look. And I think what had happened, these palaces were extremely locked to common people like us when we look at history. But now with this huge platform, we call now with the museum, social media, this kind of events, we have great access to their cuisine, to their extremely laborious food, to the extreme royal flavored, expensive ingredient use. And I think that has become accessible now to a common man, which is an extreme privilege for writers, chefs, authors, everyone.
I was looking through some of the books of yours that I have on my shelf earlier, and there's a BBC edition from from 1982, Indian cookery, and there's a dish in there called.
And did you come across Achari Bengan?
I came across royal lamb with creamy almond sauce.
Okay,
but it didn't turn out to be all that royal in the end. Let's talk about Punjabi cooking instead, since it's so much more of an influence on what we eat.
Hey, we've gone away from the palaces.
We've gone away.
What happened here?
Okay, do you have something to say about palaces?
A lot.
Yeah.
Good. Okay,
There's
fine.
So much to say.
Good. Okay, good.
And so much to say about Jodhpur.
Okay.
I haven't seen the exhibit. I am dying to see the exhibit.
Yeah.
I wish I'd seen it before I came to talk here. But Jodhpur itself is a revelation in terms of food. I think I have had the best samosas in India in the markets of Jodhpur. Mm-hmm. The best, out of this world.
All right.
Then in the royal palaces, what you get very often, which you don't find anywhere else, is the hunt, the food of the hunt, shikar ka khana.
Okay.
And the hunt is what? It goes from hare, H-A-R-E, and it goes to duck, it goes to deer in hundreds of different forms. it is just full of shikar, not only cooked for your dinner, but pickled. And I've had the most marvelous versions of pickled meats that I found only really in that form in Rajasthan.
Okay.
And they're absolutely delicious. You can have nothing else but the pickles that are made with the wild boar or whatever else they have gone hunting for and managed to get. So, and the other thing that I want to say, that there are communities, amazing communities around Jodhpur that do not kill animals. And you go into their lands, and you will find literally the antelope and the whatever it is play together. And because they don't kill animals, and they won't cut a tree to build a house. If a tree has fallen, they will use the wood to make a house. They're that vegetarian in a way. I don't know what else to call it, but they have an ethic that says, don't ruin the earth in any way. Don't take from the earth without giving back. And one of their dishes that I will never forget, and it is so basic, and it reminds me in a way of basic Italian food and basic so many other foods. When they travel, or even for their everyday cooking, they make a ball. And the ball has 3 things in it: garlic, chilies, salt. And these are all ground together. And it is like a ball, but it's a chutney. It's like a chutney, a salsa, you might call it. And this, when they travel, and they rub it with oil, so it can travel with them, and they eat it with plain bread or plain anything. Or you can have it as part of a meal. So they have all these basic tastes among the poorer people of the desert. And then they have all the shikar and the royal foods and things like that. Then they have the common food like the samosas. And never forget that the best papad or papadums come from where they dry the best. And the best place for drying them is the desert. So you have papad from Bikaner, which are absolutely famous, and papad from many other parts of Rajasthan. That are famous because of this reason. The sun dries them to perfection.
But I think one of the greatest addition of the royal cooking has been the curd cooking. Curd cooking is almost like pit cooking. When they actually got the meat and they had the shikari masala, which was ground, which they carried. And one thing which was unique about the palace, which I'm one of the only person in the world to own it, that they had great art in their utilization of space. So when they were traveling to all this royal, if you're talking about shikar cooking, I own this utensil which looks like a bucket, but when you open everything from it, it's almost 36 pieces. I wish this exhibition was going on, I would have loaned it for them to see it. That it's a work of mathematics at how every plate fits into it, and which is actually, it makes into small pots, bowls, plates, strainers, and cooking equipment, like the stoves. Everything fits into, because Indians are mathematics genius, and they are amazing in bargaining. So they figured out how to reduce little size by size. But the pit cooking, which you also see in Middle East a lot, is amazing, which comes from the royal palaces, which they actually got they had the hunt, which in the Rolls Royce, and they sprinkled the spices, and especially with the chili paste. Chili was also working as preservative. And it helps, and they would bury it inside the sand, and they will burn something on top of it, and they leave it there. And this was one of the most juicy, succulent meat which I had when I went for one of the royal family's tradition. And I was surprised that those meats never make it to Indian history books. We don't talk about them because somehow we don't cook them traditionally.
What kind of, the meat would be what species exactly?
I had wild boar.
Wild boar.
Yeah. And I must add to something which Madhurji said about this community. I think she's referring to Bishnoi community.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I was very intrigued by them for my big festival book, because these women would not let anything happen to their trees. And one thing which I was shocked, which I was telling Jacob, that I saw a woman in a temple breastfeeding a baby buck deer. I have that picture on Instagram which went viral. It had almost 2.5 million views, shares, because it was a woman sitting outside the temple because the mother had died during delivery or she was eaten by hunting dogs. So this buck deer was left outside. These people are one of the most unique, eco-friendly system of the universe.
And when you start driving into their territory, there are animals everywhere. They just, because they know no one's going to kill them. So they're just happy to be around. Hello, 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 hello.
Yeah. So I saw this woman breastfeeding this baby deer, buck deer, and a peacock came and sat right on her head. I'm like, is this really synchronized or? But what you said, and then a monkey comes and he grabs my camera from me. So I'm like, I don't know what to do in this place. And like, it's a unique expression of people who we think hunters, but they're not hunters. You think they're all royals, but they're not all royals. But there's a uniqueness of the disparity of culture inside the palace walls and outside.
And the hunting of these human-weaned buck deer is discouraged.
But to give Indians a reference, what am I talking about? You know Salman Khan, India's biggest star? He has a big case against him because he killed the black buck deer, which these women feel was their family member. And that is why the case is going on for so long.
Amazing. All right. Karam Sethi, if I'm pronouncing his name right, who owns Trishna and Gymkhana in London, 2 Michelin-starred restaurants. I was reading a story very recently about Indian food in London, which is obviously fantastic, and he was complaining there were no Rajasthani restaurants. He was talking about the emissions. When from the outside looking in, London always looks like a treasure trove of Indian variety, and he was enumerating all its failings, and Rajasthani cuisine was the one that he mentioned a few times. But upstairs, I thought you had mixed feelings.
Well, there's one other Rajasthani cuisine, that's Marwari Food, which is absolutely wonderful. And Marwaris are a business community, and they have turned out some of the richest men in India, are very often Marwaris. And they eat a certain kind of vegetarian food. But it's their own style of cooking, and you can't find that anywhere. I think at one time, there was a woman who cooked Marwari food in Delhi, and you could actually go and have it at a house. But otherwise, you have to go into homes. Nobody will give it to you. But it is some of India's most delicious vegetarian food. So there are all these things to be found in the desert if you're looking for it. And that's true, actually, in India, not only of the desert, but for every part of India. You go into one area of India, you say, okay, that's the area I'm going into. In southwest Karnataka, I'm going there. And then you'll find things you've never seen before. I mean, I am Indian, I'm of a certain age, so I've traveled all through India, but I go there and I see things I've never seen before. I see people making things with mushrooms that are the size of big dinner plates that grow in the forests. It's incredible, the dishes that you find, and I will go on finding them. India is such a large country and such an unknown country in so many ways. Nobody can know every corner of the country. And there's always something to explore. When I'm doing another cookbook, somebody say, what is there left to write? Isn't it all written? And of course there is a lot to write. Because if you go into different communities, you will find different dishes. And if you go into the forests of a certain area, you'll find different dishes. In the rainy season, the whole thing changes because that's what's available in the rainy season. So you just have to follow these things through and find them and write about them. It's endless.
Yeah.
I'm just going to add one thing to desert cuisine. Desert cuisine means adaptability to what's available. And most of the deserts do not have much available. Whenever I'm traveling in this area where this exhibition is from, one thing which you see very uniquely is Kher Sangri.
Yes, I love them.
I just think it's unique, and it's a, and I wish
it's a bud.
It's a bud.
It's a bud.
And from a tree, which they dry. I wish there was a way that we could do tasting, but that's an amazing thing. They do so much with that. And one more thing is there, that the use of yogurt or milk is amazing.
Right.
It's amazing that, they use, and some of the places where I went to, I was shocked that I had camel milk cheese.
Yeah.
We never associate that to India, but I think nothing could be associated to India because it's infinity. You don't stop learning there. And one thing which I had something amazing in the palace was I had a dessert made out of minced lamb.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I was like, okay, this is amazing. And he's saying, guess what this is? You are the host on the show. I'm like, I couldn't. And I'm like, what is this? This is delicious. It looked like that, it was cuddled cheese or something, and it was tender, but they had many times washed that meat. It was a minced meat, which was cooked for hours and hours by changing the water. In the end, they added into reduced milk, and they added nuts and saffron. I'm having meat for dessert. I'm like, wow, that really goes well with the cookbook, because people think this is an edit mistake.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the milk gave it sweetness and the long cooking as well.
And it just kept camouflaged. It was like, I've had something similar in Turkey too, but this was unique.
Yeah.
Because in India, they use goat, and it was minced goat meat.
Yeah, yeah. And, yeah, that reminds me of something. Rajasthani goat meat is also considered some of the best in the world because of what they eat. And of course, in India, they specify, use the front legs, use the back legs, don't use...
In that region, not in India.
Yes. So it's very interesting, and people will say, get Rajasthani goat because that's the best meat in the country.
It's also because of they're very strong,
Yeah.
very strong, resilient animals, if you see them.
I've had Rajasthani goat curry in London, but I guess
Lal
it was
mas.
at Cinnamon Club, but it's the wrong
Lal,
goat.
They have lal mas.
Wrong goat. That's the English goat.
Oh. Obviously inadequate, yeah. And
Not worth the sacrifice.
speaking of English inadequacies, this is how you got started cooking. Because when you arrived there in the 50s, went to RADA,
Right.
you found the food disgraceful, and you wrote home and got recipes from your mother.
Right.
Can you paint a picture for us a little about that?
Okay. So here I am, a student at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, studying drama. And for every lunch, we climb 5 flights of stairs and go to the canteen that is on the top floor. And there you get a see-through slice of gray roast beef. With it is sort of cabbage that you feel has been cooked for 2 years. And there's some wishy-washy potatoes that seem like they're mixed up with the cabbage. And then you eat this and you start dreaming. Khade masale ka gosht. Hing zire ke aloo. You start aloo gobi. All these wonderful Indian dishes with cauliflower, with potatoes, and some of the goat meats that I grew up with. And I began dreaming of them. How do I get them? So I said, maybe there's a restaurant somewhere I can go. So in Leicester Square, there were 1 or 2 Indian restaurants. But what were they? People who were there in the 50s will tell you that they were rubbish. And it was, as if they had Xeroxed the menu from each other. Mm-hmm. There were a few of them. And everything was based on heat. So the hottest was madras, they called it, chicken madras. Next was vindaloo, but all done in terms of heat. And if you really couldn't manage, you had a korma, which was supposed to be no heat at all, practically, and very white looking. And interestingly enough, that theory of Indian food has persisted. And today, in English pubs, like a Thursday would be designated curry day. So you could have curry with your lager, either free or for very little money. And I remember going around interviewing people at a pub on curry day and asking everybody what they were eating and why they were eating it. And I came to a 14-year-old boy on the cusp of something, manhood maybe. And I asked him what he had ordered. He said, I ordered chicken madras. I used to get chicken korma, but now that I've grown up, I'm having chicken madras. So it's a sign to be able to eat hotter food, is a sign of being grown up or something like that. And when you taste that, it's only as if somebody had added 2 more tablespoons of chili powder. You felt the sludge of chili powder in it. It was really sludge in there. And no special spices, no special ingredients to distinguish one curry from another curry. So that's how I started, with this kind of food all around me. And I started cooking. I didn't know a thing. I'd never been in the kitchen, really. There were cooks who cooked, and my mother supervised, and everything came out great. It was just wonderful. And then suddenly I had to do it, not unlike you, Seema. I mean, wasn't that different? I didn't know how to cook.
It's a dramatic time in your life when that happens.
Yeah, so a lot of us started like that, and then you learn. You learn by experimentation, and you learn through writing home.
But the infusion of Indian flavors to the UK. You mentioned one place in Leicester Square. There were 6 Indian restaurants in the UK in 1939. Now there are 9,000, and English people spend £3 billion a year on Indian food.
It sustains the economy.
So the days of the photocopied menu are slightly past.
Right.
Yeah, and in I guess 2011, an Indian restaurant got its first Michelin star in London, Tamarind in Mayfair, and then 10 years later, you did the same thing in New York. You got a Michelin star, and this has changed people's perception of the cuisine, right? Upscale, the idea that Indian food would qualify for Michelin stars has made more possible in terms of exporting the vision.
I'm sure you'll agree, there's a big change which happens when you're trying to achieve that benchmark. You want to modulate the cuisine, adapt the cuisine way too much.
Right.
Sometimes you do not know what you leave behind and what you take forward with you. If you're doing tasting menus and you're doing everything to impress that inspector at the Michelin Guide or the New York Times, sometimes I feel that you become very empty, which you must have experienced too. That sometimes you start feeling that, is this the food which gives me comfort, which I'm serving? Sometimes you need to make that compromise, or sometimes you need to move on and you say, I need to get this star. I need to get this star. I'm least ambitious, extremely lazy guy who came to hide from my own troubles in India with the government. I had a big fight. So I just came to hide in New York because I thought this is the place to hide. And somehow it was the chefs I worked with in the small restaurants or the American chefs who constantly degraded you, constantly kept pushing you, and constantly kept telling you that this is less. What you do is less. This is of no significance to us. And this cuisine is really not a cuisine. You're never going to be qualified to get a Michelin star. I think I did it out of a rebel. I'm a person who, if you tell him not to do something, I'll do that. So I decided in 2004, when I cooked at the James Beard House for the first time, I said, and the chef said, oh, one-time luck. I said, you know what? Michelin Guide is going to come to US one day. And I promise I'm going to do everything to be prepared for that. I did work a lot in Paris with, I would only do the staff meals. And the chefs thought, if I touch the food, it'll get spoiled. But it was okay. It was okay when you did a tasting menu, nobody came. It was okay. You did a tasting menu. And people felt that, no, this cuisine is less. But, I kept a very strong denial in my heart. I said, no, this is the cuisine I was born with. This is the cuisine which I've learned. I've been tempered through all these seasons for almost 30 years, and I am going to get this. But I remember when the Michelin Guide, they call you, it was 1 o'clock, and it's a very funny 90 seconds, which I said on the show once, that when they call you, they tell you that you got a Michelin star, you'll be called a Michelin star chef. And I don't hear, I just talk. So I'm talking to I don't know who's that person on the other side of the phone. It's a British accent, and she's like, we've tried it. It's an amazing accomplishment for what you've come from and what you're standing now. I started business way too early. So I remember when she got off the phone and she said that you'll be called a Michelin star chef. I don't know what that I really was an illusion or delusion. And I had a small note on my desk, only one. I'm extremely hygienic for that. I collect very small things, I burn everything else. And it said, they came to bury me, they forgot I was a seed. For me, that was that day when I felt that, like the Mexican Revolution, they used to use this. They came to bury me, they forgot I was a seed. For me, that was the Indian food, and that was the benchmark. If it was for an external endorsement, Indian food has been endorsed by her, and she got the validation worldwide. But that was a very external success story. But for me, that moment was a big thing because it got you a chance to tell you that this was possible. It was possible to do pure cuisine and still get that kind of validation in the world because the cuisine was not less. It was the people who were looking at it at that point, they were not accepting change. It was a shock to many people. And it's a very tough market. New York is a very tough market. And one thing which you learn in New York is the concept of, which comes from India, rebirth. It teaches you reincarnation. And I think it was reincarnation of Indian cuisine for that external validation, which was a must. It's like the Oscars. If you don't get it, people constantly doubt your craft. But that was amazing because it settled that thing of all those chefs who constantly believed that this cuisine would not be validated ever. It's a tough, Michelin and all those glamour, we see the New York Times stars, it's absolutely a white culture thing. But to enter that at that point where people were like, still struggling about accepting the cuisine. A lot of people come to the restaurant and say, oh, we have a book of Mother Jaffrey. Is that validation enough? We like Indian food. I'm like, okay, that's enough just to begin with, but you need to cook from that book.
6 years you had a star, and it led directly to your next, to MasterChef.
Yeah. It was on the same day. On October 2nd, I got the Michelin star. And on Diwali, on October 22nd, I was on air, totally unknown in India, watched by 300 million people as I walked into MasterChef. And I don't speak Hindi. I come from Amritsar. We speak a different dialect of Hindi. We also speak English, but always after 9 o'clock in the night. But I hope nobody hears it. You know what I'm saying. Everybody gets drunk in my hometown and they only speak English after 9. But I had to learn Hindi to be on that show because I said, no, we need to take the story far. We need to tell that the child growing up in a small home, growing up in the riots without any food at home, with a family who doesn't believe that he should follow his heart. This is the story, we must take it to their homes. And that was the great channel I got. And I'm glad I took the opportunity to do that. And I learned Hindi for that.
300 million people. Now, you were discouraged from getting into cooking when you were young. Here in North America, there's a lot of discussion about how women are treated in professional kitchens. Back home, slightly different attitude to a young man's desire to be in the kitchen. You were told it wasn't a man's job.
Yeah.
And
in middle-class family in India, there's an issue. We don't care about two kinds of kids. One who's a topper, who's brilliant, he's going to get a job, he's going to get settled, or the lowest one, who is absolutely a rebel, doesn't listen to anyone, fails in every class. I was the lower one, my brother was the higher one. So my parents said, damn, let him do whatever he wants to do. But I did it for money. I started going to people's houses to cook for money. My grandmother used to fry breads, and we used to go to school. we don't have canteens in school like you have in America. You have cafeterias. So we could take these breads and sell it in schools. That is where I got obsessed. And first time I made money, I felt empowered and I got money home. And the city was going through a rough time. This was during the riots of 1984. And this is the first time I earned money. And it was amazing. And I got obsessed. And I said, I'm going to own a business now. And it's like, what kind of business? I said, we're going to do catering, kitty parties. It's a very foreign culture to the rest of the Western world. But I agree that a lot of people would not, a family still doesn't support boys cooking and going to colleges, but it is changing slowly, but it is changing.
But now you've attained vindication. You've cooked for an American president, and you've cooked for Maduro.
I've cooked for you many times. I've cooked for you 3 times. Yeah. See,
I'll take your word for it.
We can be so invisible. Okay, I'll tell you. First was with Judi Dench. First was with Judi Dench when you were attending the event of Victoria and
Yes.
Abdul.
Yes.
I did the entire event.
What did you cook?
I did, the entire thing was Victoria's obsession with mangoes. So I did an entire menu with mangoes. It was a lot of food. You remember?
No, I didn't go to that.
Okay.
Next time.
You remember Judi Dench? We were hosting a lunch.
Yeah, I remember Judi Dench.
Do you remember the
Yes,
food?
yes.
We are the invisible slaves. We don't be seen.
Oh God, I feel
Sometimes.
terrible. But
No, because sometimes it's difficult for me to come out, but I was doing the entire catering. I've done a lot of caterings for events where you were honored or you were a part of it. It's okay. Sun doesn't
Sorry.
need to know how far the light goes. It's okay.
I'm sure you'll make an impression next time.
Yeah. Because when we're doing caterings, outdoor caterings, we were a part of the events so many times, especially in New York. It's so celebrated. So that, but your being in the attendance would make you so conscious that you don't want to go out now. No distraction. Let's just focus on doing the things right.
well, you have to make yourself known.
You can light any lamp in front of the sun, you still can't see the lamp.
Oh God, oh God. Oh God.
So, moving on. You published 2 enormous books on vegetarian cookery. Three? Okay. So I have 2 of them, sorry. But the 2 I have, there must be 500 vegetarian recipes. Like, it's just
Right.
a fantastic amount of vegetarian exploration. Nowadays in North America, it's so increasingly trendy every day to eat vegetarian or vegan. Your books don't have, tofu-based shish kebabs or any kind of. America is obsessed with making vegetarian versions of bad food they used to eat and miss, like hamburgers and hot dogs and turkeys even. But you've managed to produce an entirely original oeuvre that focuses entirely on the vegetable in question. Does it give you a certain despair when you look at other vegetarian trends, or does it not?
Does it give me what, sorry?
Do you despair when you look at the lack of imagination in Western vegetarian cookery?
Well, no, because I don't think that's true. There are people like Deborah Madison who are writing wonderful vegetarian books.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are
Yeah.
working on very good. Actually, Alice Waters has done a book on vegetables, how to cook vegetables, which is absolutely wonderful. So there are many writers I know who are doing good books. On,
There's a lot of forward thinking.
They're doing books on vegetables as opposed to vegetarian food.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a difference. But I think because it's not just prejudice, but I really believe that the best vegetarian food in the world comes from India. The most varied, the most exciting, the most full of different categories, full of regional differences.
Yeah.
It has this kind of variety that no other food has. And even if you try vegetarian food in Thailand, for example, they will put fish sauce in it and say it's vegetarian.
Yeah.
If you go to Hong Kong, they will have scallops in it. And they say, oh, scallops are vegetarian, dried scallops are vegetarian. And say, oh, okay. So their idea of vegetarianism is not everyone's idea of vegetarianism. But India has mastered it over 4,000 years. They've mastered vegetarian food. And it's not only delicious, but it's very healthy. And the spices have been worked out, like the ginger is put in for a certain reason, the turmeric is put in for a certain reason, it's antiseptic, it does 20 functions. Asafoetida is a digestive. It can cure horses of indigestion. So what about human beings? Just a pinch will do a lot of wonders. So all this has been worked out over time, and our vegetarian food is just the most luscious stuff you can ever get. You can get everything from pancakes, savory pancakes like dosas and the whole family of pancakes. In the north we have chilas and chickpea flour pancakes, all savory things. I'm not talking about sweet pancakes. And every region of India has some kind of vegetarian pancake. You don't have to look at meat. You don't miss meat because it's been worked out in such a way that it's fully satisfying on its own. Yeah. So what other country has that? So I think that's what makes Indian food so unique, and vegetarianism in India so odd and different from vegetarianism anywhere else. I am old enough to have lived through the health food restaurant phase.
Right.
Those of you who are old enough will remember that. That awful glutinous brown rice, remember? And then just sort of simply boiled vegetables sort of on top. And you ate it and felt virtuous, but nothing else. We all went through that phase till everyone said, what rubbish. I'm not eating this rubbish. Give me something that has a taste to it. Yeah. So that just went its own way and died a natural, well-deserved death. But other kinds of vegetarianism, and that's I think, amongst my books, the vegetarian books have done the best, right, and none have died out.
Yeah, it's fun because of the reason you just outlined. It doesn't feel like penance. It's joyful.
It doesn't feel like penance.
Yeah,
and why should anything feel like penance?
Very important thing is that in America, in the Western culture, vegetables is a side. It's given the status of a side. It's never given a complete, wholesome status. Right. In India, it enjoys a complete status. That's the dish. I think that is because they have enough understanding of protein. They have enough understanding of vitamins or starch. They figured out their own combinations, and because they had so much of produce, not just religious reasons. I just think that in India, you've got to try vegetarian cuisine. And right now, New York Times best-selling book is Jose Andres' Cooked Vegetables, which is like, he's actually doing a lot of Indian-style work in that.
Right. No, I mean, it is...
It's not a side. In Western culture, vegetarian is a side. It's a small side dish. And if you travel in sometimes Eastern Europe, I've traveled with my mom, and they're like, are you okay? You're eating vegetarian? I was like, yes. She can't have too much of mashed potatoes. Do you have any other choice?
Yeah.
Things are changing.
Talking about potatoes, I've been to Peru, where potatoes originated. I've seen all the amazing things they actually do with the potato. But I remember reading a text written by an Indian for a change. Usually the texts we get to read in India are written by Germans and British people, but very often you will find an Indian making a good comment or two. And in the sort of 18th, 19th centuries, somebody said, the best thing the white man has given us is the potato. So once the potato came to India, look what we did with it. There are 1,000 dishes with potatoes, or 2,000, 3,000 dishes with potatoes, each different from the other. Yeah. And they are all incredible. I could just eat Indian potatoes in different ways, day after day after day. And I'd get too fat, but for that reason I don't eat them. But my choice, very often is not a sweet thing. If I'm going to indulge and not care about putting on weight, I would rather eat a potato cooked the Indian way than anything else.
It's true. There's extraordinary range there. And
I love it. Exhibition on palaces, but I told you, we will be inclined to the common man's food.
Yeah.
Because that is our gravity for all of us. Everyone who's come from India, who's been inspired by cuisine, has been inspired by the street food. And potatoes being easily accessible and cheaper, you see what they do with it.
yeah, and nutritious. Yeah.
And efficiency and fast. And from batata vada to chaats to everything is potatoes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So as time winds down, I wanted to talk about some upcoming projects of yours. You have a restaurant coming with a very interesting business partner.
Can't talk.
Can't talk about that?
But it's in Dubai. It's at the JA Resorts. It's one of the most anticipated restaurant opening. And inspired by the banks of River Ganges, I called the restaurant Kinara. It is because of my big inspiration for the last 10 years has been that river banks.
Okay.
And it's a unique thing because somehow as chefs, I just feel that, of course we'll do regional cuisine, but we'll do very similar to what Madhu did one of her books, where she mentioned the name of the person who gave the dish to her.
I always do.
Always, that is like
I always do.
head text, this is D'Souza,
credit
this
the
is
person whose
Patel's, this
recipe
is
is it.
Shah's dish, this is Dokla from. So I said, why hasn't a chef been able to do that? Because the vanity. So I said, okay, let's remove that. Of course, it will be my version of that dish. So we are doing Mrs. Shetty's Meneskai. It's one of my favorite dish from that region of Mangalore, where it's a pineapple curry. Yeah, they make curries out of everything, and this is one. So we said, let's do one thing. Let's give a tribute of every dish that who has given this dish to us. And then we do our version of it as authentic as ever. And it's a unique restaurant. It opens on October 2nd.
October 2nd. Okay. And you have a film coming to Toronto.
We're going to do the Lightbox, a special screening of the movie. I've been dying to show the movie to Mother. I think she, over the last decades, has represented Indian arts, which compels people like me to broaden ourselves, what is really defined by art. This is my first feature film. I've done a lot of documentaries before, but this is my first feature film, which is inspired by a street girl. After my father's death, I was finding closure, and on Diwali, I had the great honor of showing this movie at Mr. Bhatia's house. And so it's about the street kids and their resilience. Of course, it's a lot of tribute to Meera Nair for bringing that attention to us. But after my father passed away, I met this little girl who was a tightrope walker who was saving money to go to school. And after my dad, I was hiding in Varanasi. I was still finding a closure to my loss. But her drive just motivated me to stand up one more time and to write an entire screenplay dedicated to this girl who's trying to save money, walking on the tightrope. And I was walking on the tightrope at that time. But all those people who call out wrong things in traditions are walking on the tightrope in every single person's life. So I said, she's so symbolic, and I made an entire feature film. And UN is going to screen the movie on July 12th, a full 2,000 people screening, which is a big deal.
Congratulations. Incredible story. And do you really enjoy cooking with an instant pot? It's invented in Ottawa.
Well, it's there.
Yeah.
And many people are using it. Mm-hmm. Many young people are using it. Mm-hmm. Many find it very convenient. So my editor said, now here's this instant pot. Have you ever used it? I said, no, I haven't. She said, look at it and see if you can do authentic Indian dishes in the instant pot. Mm-hmm. Now, India has had pressure cookers for a very long time, and we know how to use pressure cookers and we know how to cook both dal, rice, and a vegetable, all go into the same pot at the same time, and then each is finished off afterwards in a different way. So we know all these techniques. We know how to do it. So I said, all right, it's not so different from the pressure cooker that I know and have used very, very often. But it does many more things. It can slow cook, it can steam, it can saute, it's not a magic pot. You have to learn how to work it. But there are buttons you can press. Yeah. And I don't know about other people's recipes. But if you follow my recipes, for example, and many people say to me, I can't make rice, I can't make basmati rice, how do I do it? And it always turns out this or that. I said, just follow my recipe. Don't look at the booklet, because that will give you al dente rice. And Indians, Asians don't eat al dente anything, you know. We like it cooked. We like to feel our rice without that little grain, that hard grain in the middle. We don't like that. So if you follow my recipe, which just requires soaking and washing and soaking, and then you use my amount of water, and then push the rice button. Done. So.
Good stuff. I don't have an Instant Pot. I do have a pressure cooker, but I was tempted.
It just makes it so easy for people.
Yeah.
So I said, all right, let me work with it. And I worked with it for that, for dals, for vegetables, for fish. People said you can't make fish because it just dies. So I found a method where you make the sauce in the pressure cooker pot. And then you take the fish, which you sort of sprinkle spices on, and like usual, salt, pepper, chili powder, turmeric, and then just slip it into the sauce, which is already cooked, and within 1 minute, done. So there are things that you can do, and if you use it for the things you can do, then why not?
You know, I used to have a cooking school, and people used to tell me, I used to have a cooking school on 23rd Street. I went bankrupt very soon. So people wouldn't come, you know, I'm talking about 2005. I was quite enterprising then. And they asked me one thing, which you said, I need to make perfect rice. So, and people have so much attention issues in New York. You try to tell them a recipe, it's like, you know, you go to Starbucks and they ask you, how are you? And you're about to say, I'm okay, she's already moved on. And they'll say, I want to make rice. So I figured out, in 15 seconds, I can teach you how to make rice. And they said, how? I said, you just keep looking in my eyes. I'm going to say, you rinse and soak the rice for at least 20 minutes. Then you double the water, the quantity of rice, and you boil it for at least 10 to 12 minutes. The water is absorbed. Take a damp cloth, keep it on top of it, reduce the heat to minimum, cover it, and let it seep and cook for at least 5 minutes. You will have a perfect basmati rice. 15 seconds. And that was also difficult for people to follow.
I hope everybody's got that. You can check details at the book signing afterwards. Thank you both so much. Really a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you very much.